need to pick your hat up.
Pick my hat up? Oh.
There you go. Yeah.
It's
completely covered up. You're like, it's like, you were like a character from like, I don't know.
I have weird ears, so it sits weird on my head. Like, do I tuck them in? Is that a thing?
Tuck your ears in?
Tuck my ears in?
I don't know.
Like,
ask your fellow women about how hats work for y'all. Like, I don't know.
Well, it was a bad hair day. I just needed something.
You were going with a hat?
Yep.
Like, one way or the other, it was a hat day.
Right. Maybe this is the key. Maybe this is what I wear for the rest of Arkansas games. I wore it yesterday.
It's fair. You can turn that around and make it going,
Yeah.
Said, I don't know, but whatever the good luck charm was, but like it
your
clearly,
boots, my hat.
Your boots, your hat,
my nephew
coming to the game, like there's been nothing, that's like been consistent, to make me go, that's the thing I'm doing this year. Like, normally like it's like, oh, I moved to one side of the couch or the different side of the couch depending on what time, like what half of the game we're in, or like if I have to wear a certain shirt because the shirt's on a winning streak, or then change the Razorback shirt up that I wear at the game. Like, I have a whole list of weird things that I have done.
No, I totally get it, because I have like my Jalen Williams Arkansas t-shirt from last year.
Yeah.
And I wore it, I think it was like one of our first losses in like conference after we'd won a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, non-conference.
Yeah.
And then I wore it during, maybe it was a Creighton game, and I was like, I'm not wearing that shirt anymore this season.
Oh my god. Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Like, I had a thing for a while. My mother-in-law normally gets me, like, a Razorback shirt, like, Christmas every year.
Yeah.
So I've worn that Christmas Razorback shirt, like, to every game, because, like, that's been, like, in the past, as long as I was wearing that shirt, we couldn't lose. And then, like, all of a sudden, like, we're losing basketball games, I'm wearing my Christmas shirt? Like, what is this? Like... What's going on here?
Where did you buy this Christmas shirt?
Like, you did something different. Something's cursed about this shirt. I don't know what it is this year, but like, yeah, I'm finally glad to, like maybe something occurred, like in the ether there, but we'll see.
Yeah,
I feel like everybody has like those weird traditions,
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
maybe we need to talk to like Be Unlimited and be like, listen, y'all need to make like a good luck
shirts. This is my
it.
lucky insert team shirt here. You know how much money you would make off those stupid
shirts? For real.
Yeah, those you would make so much money off those stupid shirts. My name is David, and welcome to the Hoop Southbound podcast.
Hey guys, it's Maddie.
And we are doing another fun week of talking about SEC basketball. A team, though, that I believe not enough people are... before we start there, yeah, I love cutting myself off right in the middle of conversation and whatnot. Maddie, what were your first initial thoughts on this week?
Kind of like last week, it's like a bomb went off and just messed up the whole standing situation. It was another crazy week where some teams won that weren't supposed to, a lot of teams lost that weren't supposed to. Alabama got their first conference loss.
Yeah, during the week they did, yeah. So my thought process is that I think this week actually went a little bit more normal, if you will, because we talked about last week with Christian about the potential for that Tennessee team, winning that Alabama game and kind of being in wounded animal mode.
Yeah.
And then they came out and played a great game against Alabama and won it. Very physical ball game in that one. And then we also talked about, I didn't think A&M was going to make the same mistakes they made in Fayetteville against Arkansas in College Station this week, So I think we're going to see a much tighter ball game. Sure enough, it was a very tight ball game, and then Texas A&M pulls it out at the end and beats Arkansas in the last 4 minutes. And then we also talked about, I thought Mississippi State was going to beat Ole Miss. I thought, Vanderbilt, like you said, don't discount Vanderbilt against Auburn.
Very true.
Vanderbilt beats Auburn. There's a lot of things that I think it went to pattern, actually, this week.
Yeah.
Not things that we totally expected, but, we were watch this game because it's going to be more interesting than what we think it is because, numbers say this, but throw it out the window because of this situation.
Yeah.
And I think we saw a lot of that this week is what we saw. A team, though, that, the only one that I don't think went to anywhere, according to, what we were talking about, was the potential for Georgia and Alabama to be a trap game. That was not a trap game. That was a murder, and the true crime documentary will be on Netflix next week, regardless if the family wants it up or not. Poor folks in Athens, so...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That, for anybody who bet the cover, it's Especially my brother-in-law.
Your brother bet the cover, yeah.
I'm so sorry.
He bet the spread for Georgia.
Yeah.
Like, but they're going to cover this 39 points. Couldn't do it.
Exactly. It was like 39 and a half. Like, something you would think be like, oh, yeah, easy.
Yeah,
Yikes.
I was looking at that and I was like, is Alabama on pace to put up 120 points right now? And they were
I think they could have.
They were on pace to do it in an early part of the game. They just started slowing down and they still got to 108 by the end of it. So, I mean, good grief. Let's it's been a weird league, but let's talk about the first team that we're going to actually do a little bit of talking on. And that would be Texas A&M. Right now, the road to the SEC championship runs through College Station, regardless of what Crimson Tide fans are saying one way or the other, that it runs through Tuscaloosa. It doesn't. The last game's in College Station. If things stay as they are right now, we're going to Texas A&M for an SEC regular season championship game.
Yeah, it's, to me, it's so crazy because it's just one of those teams we came into the season kind of discounting them, saying, we see them sitting maybe somewhere in the mid-range, and they're sitting at the top with Alabama.
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, we had Texas A&M circled as an NCAA tournament team, and we were like, yeah, I think they're going to make the tournament. I think they're going to finish about 5th, 6th in the SEC. They'll be right there competing with Alabama on that 4 line with Auburn, really, and see if they can't crack into that top 4, and obviously none of that has played out the way that anybody kind of thought how it was going to go at the beginning of the season. But Texas A&M is very much alive after a bad non-conference start, and this week we've got a pretty great interview with Blake Andrews from Good Bull Hunting to talk about where Texas A&M is in the road to College Station right now. And we welcome into the show Blake Andrews of Good Bull Hunting, a part of the SB Nation, which follows Texas A&M. How you doing today, Blake?
Doing well. Glad to be on with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you. I'll tell you, back in the non-conference schedule, I didn't know we were ever going to have a Texas A&M guest on this show at one point. I don't know if you were feeling the same way about, I don't know how happy everybody's going to be to talk about this team.
Very much so. Yeah, this was very much an unexpected thing when we were coming out of our non-conference invitational tournament. It didn't look good, and to see this team where they are now is quite the surprise. I guess I shouldn't say it's a total shock, because this has kind of been the trend 3 of the last 4 years under Buzz. So, a team that kind of gets off to a little bit of a slow start, but comes on strong in the end. So
absolutely, yeah. And speaking of that turnaround, so what has kind of been the change at A&M to make this turnaround happen this year?
Well, right around the Christmas break, you saw Buzz kind of start to adapt the style. He started to adapt the rotation. Wade Taylor had been playing on ball as the primary point guard for most of the non-conference schedule. Out of Christmas break, we started to see Wade play more off the ball and let Boots Radford run point a little bit more. I think that let the offense open up a bit more, let things flow, let Boots attack the rim a bit more. It put Wade in better positions for open looks from 3. So I think that really was kind of the key foundation of where things started. And as that kind of as the guard rotation kind of settled in, that's where you started to see better play on the interior. Julius Marble emerges. He's become a really key contributor for the Aggies on the interior. Henry Coleman has always been good. He's more of a facing the basket type of post player. He's not one of those back to the basket post moves. He's going to take you off the dribble and try to get to the rim. And so I think, again, because of that, the offense opening up a bit more with Boots running point, that kind of helped Henry establish himself as well.
Okay. So I know Maddie's a big fan of Wade Taylor. So
yeah, I said if he keeps going the way he's going, I'm going to have a poster on my wall by the end of the year.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that, because I've often wondered how other teams perceive Wade Taylor. He's kind of he's a very confident player, borderline cocky, but he backs it up, and the kid can bring it.
I could definitely feel that. So, let's talk about Wade Taylor for a second. How do you think Tennessee is going to prepare themselves for someone who isn't as explosive as Wade Taylor? We saw him in that Arkansas game have a slow start in the first half and then absolutely go nuts in the second. And so how does Tennessee kind of plan for that?
I've been wondering the same. That's the thing that I think this Tennessee game is going to be very interesting for A&M to see how they adapt to a defense that's better than they are. And that's not a common thing for that A&M has faced often. It does happen. I think we struggle with dynamic shot blocking interior players because A&M likes to attack the rim. So, having Kamala on the inside, or he's kind of a forward, but I think he's going to play a big role in this. I think Adu on the interior, I would expect him to get quite a few more minutes for Tennessee in this one, just because A&M seems to struggle when they have a big shot block, when the opposition has a big shot blocking presence on the interior. So I think Barnes will put Adu in for some pretty significant minutes.
Fair enough. So A&M and Alabama right now are tied in the SEC in the points per shot. What do you think has led to A&M's efficiency so far in that category?
If you don't take too many shots, if you grind out every possession, then you don't have to worry about whether you're as accurate. And that's it's an interesting thing that, and a lot of A&M's A&M has a lot of shot attempts that don't really get counted as shot attempts with the fouls. The Aggies' ability to get to the free throw line is one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country, as has been stated in quite a few of our games this year. So the Aggies do a really good job of getting to the interior and drawing the foul. And what's been remarkable, I think, for the last few generations of A&M basketball fans who are watching this team, is an A&M team that actually makes free throws. This is an uncommon occurrence for us. We're not used to a team that can close out a game down the stretch from the line. So I think that's part of the success that A&M has on that points per possession. There's or points per shot attempt. We slow the game down, we grind it out, so there's not as many possessions, there's not as many shot attempts, but then a lot of those shot attempts actually don't get counted as attempts because you end up at the free throw line.
Maddie, what do you always say?
I was gonna say my motto is free throws win basketball games, and that was my big question going into this Tennessee game. Me and David talked last week about how Tennessee, while they are a good defensive team, offensively one of their big struggles is not being able to get to the line. How do you think that's going to match up in this A&M game?
I think that being that this is a home game for A&M, that could be a big differentiator. That's one of the things that I feel comfortable about this. With this, you're always excited about a big game at home, but this one especially, I think A&M's got a good shot against a very good Tennessee team, simply because their ability to get to the line. You're going to have a really raucous home crowd. I think that's going to weigh on the officials quite a bit. You're going to see A&M get a lot of field goal or a lot of free throw attempts, and Tennessee's inability to score, especially here of late, the last few weeks, they've struggled, and I don't know. It'll be interesting. The one thing, Rick Barnes always has something up his sleeve with A&M. I think going back to his days at Texas, there were some really, there was just a kind of a mutual respect that was developed between the two programs as A&M was kind of on the rise in the mid to late 2000s. And so, I think since that time, he's always played A&M really well. He's always had his team really well prepared to play the Aggies. So either way, I think this is going to be a grind. I don't expect this game to get out of the 60s for either team. I think it's going to be a slog. It's going to be physical. And we'll see if the Volunteers can make free throws.
Yeah, for sure. Let's flip this a little bit and let's talk about how Buzz kind of game plans for this overall. Mm-hmm. First off, how does he attack that Tennessee defense that we've seen be so efficient? Right now, the SEC leader in defensive rating and net rating right now. So your thoughts on that?
I honestly don't know. This is where I'm curious to see what Buzz and his staff are going to come up with. It's going to be it. I don't have a good sense for how you attack Tennessee right now. I think that A&M's going to have to do what they do and just stick to attacking the rim, trying to draw fouls, trying to keep the ball moving. That's the big thing, I think, for A&M. We can't let the ball get stagnant, can't let the ball stay in one place. Pounding the ball through the floor and on the perimeter is not gonna play well for A&M if we get into that that mode. And that's what I'm genuinely afraid of, because Tennessee's defense is so strong, is that we just kind of paralyze ourselves on the outside and don't move and don't attack. And if that's the case, then you're gonna have a long night. But I think that A&M is going to just try to stick to what they do well, play inside out. That's when they're at their best. Get to the rim, and then limit the 3-point attempts. I think A&M shouldn't be shooting a lot of 3-point attempts. That's not our strong suit. We're good when we're hovering right around 15 to 18 3-pointers a game, and that's all we really need.
I mean, let's stay on the 3-point here just a little bit, and let's talk about on the Tennessee side. Santiago Vescovi has kind of been, I would say that he's been struggling a little bit. He hasn't been playing up to standards right now for Tennessee. How does Buzz kind of focus on him and make sure that he stays in that's, I guess, slog, if you will, the muck, and make sure that he doesn't be as explosive as we know he can turn into being?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, again, A&M's defensive rotations are going to have to be really on point, making sure they keep a hand in his face. When A&M, and this is where I think Tennessee's going to focus a lot of energy on trying to get the ball inside. Collapsing, A&M typically doubles in the post, and so it's going to create a lot of looks on the outside. It always does, and what the Aggie defense has prided itself on is its ability to close out and making sure that they get a hand in a face, usually on the run. That's where Vescovi is the one that worries me, because that guy, if he gets hot, this could be all over, rather quickly. So I think A&M will do a good job of making sure that they keep a hand in his face, keep running at him, making sure he doesn't get open looks. And, hopefully he's suffering from a bit of tired legs, and a Tuesday game will not give him a chance to recharge and get his legs underneath him.
Makes total sense. Maddie, do you have a question real fast on the Tennessee game before I move on here?
Well, I don't have a question about the Tennessee game, but I have one more question for Blake.
Okay, go for it.
So I think the most wild thing to me is if any other team was tied with Alabama in the standings, we'd get so tired of hearing their name. But I feel like that's not the case with A&M. Like, I feel like I haven't seen anything about them besides, the research that me and David do to prepare the podcast. So do you think it's going to take a win against Tennessee, or what do you think it's going to take to, I guess, bring A&M up to that standard for everybody to be talking about them going into the tournament?
Yeah, I think it's going to take a win against Tennessee. That non-conference schedule hurt A&M so much. Or the non-conference strength of schedule plus a poor showing against a poor non-conference strength of schedule just put A&M behind the 8 ball. The Aggies haven't had a lot of attention, and it's kind of worked to their advantage. They've been able to come in under the radar. I don't think teams are overlooking them, but I do think that there's for the first several weeks, I don't think that teams brought the same intensity. You've seen that change in the last several weeks. A&M's getting a lot of teams' best shot now, but the Aggies have responded well, and you're starting to see that momentum come in terms of media coverage, things like that. A&M's getting more games on ESPN, ESPN2, but still, I think up until really the last couple weeks, the media coverage hasn't been there, simply because we've been on the bubble. From an NCAA tournament perspective, everybody's been wondering, like, how is this team that's second in the SEC still on the bubble? And so that's kind of been the main focus of the media attention, has just been, well, is A&M going to get off the bubble or not? I think we're firmly off the bubble now. I think we're sitting probably in that 9 to 10 seed range. So right now we're playing for seeding. And that's the remarkable thing. I was talking to one of my friends about this earlier this week, and I said, could you imagine if A&M didn't have the 2 non-conference losses to Murray State and Wofford? Those are those 2 games. If they had 2 more wins, 2 fewer losses, if this team was, let's say, 23-5, could you imagine the hysteria that would be, in the media about this team? We'd probably be ranked in the top 15 at worst. It's just an amazing thing to ponder, like the difference that those 2 games made. But at the same time, that's the reality of where this team is.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I mean, we've been talking to bracketologists here on the show in the past couple of weeks, and they've said the exact same thing about A&M. And I agree with you right now. I do think that they are coming off the bubble. Speaking of bubble teams, you guys also face Mississippi State this week. I'm not going to put any pressure on you. I just wanted some of your initial thoughts about facing a Mississippi State team that's really super tough, because they are playing like they're on the bubble and they want to get into the NCAA tournament. Your first initial thoughts on that game that's coming up?
Yeah, that game in Starkville is going to be an interesting one. The Bulldogs are playing very well. I'm curious to see what A&M is going to do to slow those guys down, because they've been stellar in the last 6 weeks. So I'm really excited to see what A&M does in that environment. I was excited about the Mizzou game. I anticipated Mizzou kind of bringing it and really making a run at A&M, and was kind of disappointed. Kwame Brown played well, but the rest of the lineup, A&M did a nice job neutralizing them, and they did get some open looks from distance, but just didn't seem to, outside of Brown, they really just didn't seem to get a lot of, just couldn't get much to fall. So it'll be interesting to see how things happen in Starkville, because that's going to be an interesting game for A&M. At this point, we're looking for one more win just to secure at least second place. But I know that this team is looking also to try to make a run and get to a tie with a tie at worst, or even better, against Alabama for the conference championship. So I don't think Buzz and that crew are gonna take it easy by any means, but we'll see how things evolve.
Well, we've been saying it the last, ever since the Arkansas win. SEC runs through College Station by technicality right now. So, it's definitely interesting. So all the pressures, the show's going on in College Station, and things stay the norm. Let's talk about this real fast. Texas A&M hasn't won the SEC since 2016. What would winning that title mean for this program? And what do you do for the growth of what would it mean for the growth of the fan base down there?
Well, I think that the fan base is pretty well entrenched. The crowds this year at Reed have been outstanding. This team wants a winner, or this college wants a winner, right? This university loves winning, and they'll support your any of the programs that are winning. We've seen it in women's soccer. We've seen it with the baseball team. And the baseball has always done well at A&M, but the women's soccer team draws one of the best crowds in the country nationally. So the fan base at A&M has no problem supporting our sports. I think where you're going to see the evolution for this program is not so much in the fan base, but more so in the talent that Buzz has been able to recruit. That's been the challenge, I think, for Buzz. The talent that he's brought in has been really solid, but it hasn't been the 4-star, 5-star caliber. Wade Taylor and Manny Obaseki, of course, those guys came in and have been tremendous talent. But at the same time, a lot of what Buzz has done has been through the transfer portal. And so I think getting some of those big names coming in on the high school front would certainly go a long way. And I think that winning a conference title would definitely kind of open that door, finally kind of getting Buzz over that hill. He's really just hasn't really shown up in the high school recruiting the same way he had done at Marquette and at Virginia Tech. Those things take time. I know COVID really created a damper on him accelerating that growth of the program, but I think we're now seeing him, turn that corner and really build a juggernaut.
Makes sense. So Maddie knows this. Every interview, I ask a really stupid question at the end of the show. This week, I'm not going to so much ask a question, but Maddie does know it is a tradition on this show in which I badmouth Texas. And I thoroughly enjoy it as an alma mater of my school, and having two brothers who also are big Longhorn fans. I thoroughly enjoy this segment of Trash Talking Texas. So would you like to do the honors this week of Trash Talking Texas?
Well, I have no qualms with trash talking Texas. But
I didn't figure an Aggie fan would.
Yeah, no. I'm just really glad that they came to their senses and realized that A&M was right all along, that the SEC was a better place. Arkansas fans will commiserate, and everyone else in the conference is about to find out that this this stuffy air of haughtiness will just grate on you. But I think that they're going to find out that life's a little different when you're not the big dog in town, and when there are 12 other teams who are just as competent, and 12 other universities who have just the same number of resources, if not more. The skin's on the wall. All that stuff kind of melts away when they join the SEC. So
it is a whole new world. All right, do you want to let the people know where they can find you and everything on social media, and where they can find some of your articles on SB Nation?
Yeah, goodbullhunting.com. Come check us out. I know if you follow A&M football, even if you don't follow A&M football, but you're an SEC football fan, you'll probably find yourself over there. We harbor the infamous RCB05, the master of Photoshop, who has tricked many a college football fan into thinking that A&M was going to wear blue jean pants for their bowl game uniforms. And so you're probably, if you're a SEC sports fan, you've probably run across Good Bull Hunting between RCB or between String, but we also do good work around baseball. We got great college baseball writers over there. We got, I do my thing from a college basketball perspective. So come check us out. And then you can find me on Twitter at PMOTFTAC07.
All right. Thank you so much, Blake, for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure to be on with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great talking to you, man.
And I want to thank Blake again for coming on the show and talking to us a little bit about Texas A&M. I wasn't playing. There was a time in the season where we really didn't know if we were ever going to have someone on the show to talk about Texas A&M.
I didn't think there was a time in the schedule we thought we would need to.
No, there really wasn't. Yeah, it's come alive, and Texas A&M is a really good basketball team, it turns out, despite some of the crazy losses. So, it's weird. Of course, they're challenging right now the number one team in the SEC, and that is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Really good basketball team. No one needs to give you any other thoughts besides that, really. Obviously, they lost in Knoxville this week to a good Tennessee team with a very good defense and a very physical basketball game. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing I'm going to say about that game against Tennessee is just that simply Tennessee needed that W.
They really did.
They got it, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it kind of factors into they have so many veteran players on Tennessee.
Yes.
They knew what it took to win, and then you have that Alabama pretty fresh-faced team going on the road. It's going to make it difficult for them.
Yeah, and I think that was one of those moments also that we did see a reality also for Alabama. Alabama's a very good basketball team. So when I say this, don't take this the wrong way. But you have a significant number of first-year coaches this year in the SEC, and I do think that contributes a little bit when it comes to evaluating this Alabama team, because some of their wins are against teams, the teams they're blowing out. A lot of these teams are not first-year, or a lot of them are first-year coaches, or teams that have not been great. Look at the Georgia game on Saturday. The Mike White's first year in Georgia. It's a murder fest. LSU first-year head coach McMahon. It's a murder fest. It doesn't go good for those teams. But, we see teams like, Tennessee, who has a veteran lineup with Rick Barnes. Very competitive game with Alabama. When Alabama went to Auburn earlier this season, very competitive game with Auburn. That's not a first-year head coach in Bruce Pearl. And then you're talking about also, Arkansas. That game didn't get out of Arkansas's grasp until the last 4 minutes in that game.
Until Brandon Miller
shot Miller
4 back-to-back threes.
Noah Clowney's 3, and then Brandon Miller's 2 threes, and finally figuring out how to get Debo off of Brandon Miller. Alabama wins the ball game. Brilliant play calling by Nate Oates. But that's what we're seeing, is that there's a gap that we've been talking about. So I think that's something that has shown reality to itself in kind of the nuance of talking about this Alabama team, is that they are just not. They're not LeBron James and the 1990 Chicago Bulls out there playing in the SEC. There is a little bit of nuance to this conversation that needs to be had. And I think that's what Tennessee kind of showed us a little bit in the reality of it. And then you also have to take in the Tennessee factor. Wounded animal mode is a real thing, and they needed that W.
Yep, exactly. And then, you turn around and Alabama goes wounded animal mode. in Georgia.
No, I don't think they necessarily went wounded animal mode. I think they just went, we're not losing this damn game. Like, I think that's what happened.
Is that like the level above wounded animal mode?
Yeah.
It's like, here's that
wounded
one in
animal mode,
Alabama
you're
way
hurt.
here.
Wounded animal mode, you're legitimately hurt and you need this. Alabama was in, that mode that they went in against Vanderbilt, like after the Oklahoma loss.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's where they started going in. And poor Georgia, that was a horror film that, shouldn't have been televised. Like, that was unholy things occurred during that game. But, there was some significant news that did also come out for the Tide this week. No mystery on who the top seed line was on Saturday's bracket reveal. It was the Alabama Crimson Tide. And all that good stuff. But yeah, they got the number one over Houston, who is the net number one team right now. Alabama right now, number one overall, looking into the tournament committee, definitely likes Alabama. It's interesting that I don't know if Alabama's ever been the number one overall at this point in the season.
I don't think so. Just going through doing my research for this week, it looked pretty sparse. Looking up, historical basketball seasons for Alabama. I think this is going to be one of those.
Oh, this is one of the best Alabama teams in the history of the program. Like 100%. That's 100% true. And I think that's, Saturday's bracket reveal for the top 16 was very interesting because that's a big moment in the history of Alabama. Like it hasn't happened.
It's a turning point, definitely, in the program.
Yeah, and you have the commitment from Nate Oates saying that he's going to be there longer. We'll see how that plays out in the end because contracts don't necessarily mean anything. I'm not saying Nate Oates is leaving, but he has made that commitment to the team. So long term, like we're seeing a really good trend for Alabama to kind of change history a little bit for their team. So it's interesting. But yeah, no, the primary purpose of the NCAA's in-season bracket reveal is to actually just generate discussion about who these number one teams are. And I don't think there's any doubt from like a greater perspective, like people have talked about Houston should be the number one team. I don't buy that for a second.
No.
I will never buy that Houston's the number one team until they prove it to me. It's the same thing with Gonzaga.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I've often called Houston Texas's version of Gonzaga. But like it's the reality of it. Alabama is, plays in a tough conference. They have a hard situation. They look like the number one team. I think number one and number two in all reality, in my opinion, are Purdue, Alabama, and then Kansas is probably in that mix as well.
Yep.
So like right now, big portion of the season, it's a big deal headed towards Selection Sunday, which we're only like a month out from. Can you believe that?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
We'll have to get our brackets ready.
I know, right? It's gonna be one of those days kids will never know the joy of their dad sitting in front of the television screaming to be quiet so he can hear every team as he fills out his newspaper bracket right there. It's like there's some core memories being triggered in some people right now. Me saying that.
Last year was the first year that I ever watched Selection Sunday.
Really? That was the first year? Like you normally just waited for the bracket the next day
pretty
to fill it up?
Pretty much. It was one of those like I think Arkansas had that like I don't know if it was like a live thing while they were watching it, but I was keeping up with it that way, and so I finally turned it on. You know me, like I'm an Arkansas fan through and through.
Selection Sunday is like one of the best Sundays in all of sports.
Well, I will get to experience it for real this time.
Yeah, we're gonna have a selection party over here at my house. Like it's like the Super Bowl. Like, come on. It's like it's a big deal, Maddie. It's a big deal. We gotta commit to Selection Sunday. It's Selection Sunday. Tied this week. We can talk about their first game. Do we really want to talk about them playing South Carolina?
I mean, I feel like it's going to be another Georgia game, if we're going to be honest.
That's fair. I do expect Alabama to handle the first-year coaches as they've treated most of the first-year coaches this season.
I think the only benefit for South Carolina is that it's at home for them.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're going to get a lot of fans in there specifically to watch the Alabama team.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, but I think that's probably what's happening.
Well, I expect to kind of see an empty gym a little bit with some Tide fans, propping their feet up. It's like, let's watch this. And I get to watch Gigi Jackson play a little bit of basketball in the process. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Alabama, though, I 100%, I think they're going to beat South Carolina. It's one of those games it's not even worth putting money on the money line for because the odds are give you for $200 you can net an entire $3, you know, or something like that is how it'll come out to be. But let's talk about their game on Saturday, their rematch with the Arkansas Razorbacks. Now, the thing with Arkansas is that it doesn't feel like they're winning consistently, but they've actually won 3 of their last 5, and they've played much better basketball throughout the last 8 games or so since they got done playing Baylor. And, you know, Debo Davis kind of started his turnaround. It's been a slow build for Arkansas, but like they're actually better than their track record right now looks a little bit better. So I'm interested in this game.
I am too. You know, we talked about it a little bit before we jumped on to record. I'm really interested after the game that Jalen Graham had on Saturday to see how he's going to influence that game against Alabama, because I think he could be a key piece to help Arkansas get a little bit more of an edge than they had in the previous game.
That's in my notes for when we talk about Arkansas coming up here in just, I think Arkansas's next, actually. Auburn's next. But after Auburn, we're going to talk about Arkansas. But, that's actually a portion of my notes, and I'll just kind of preview it a little bit. I really liked the idea of putting Jalen Graham out there and along with alternating the Mitchell twins in and out, because I think the Mitchell twins give you a lot of defensive presence. For sure. And then Jalen Graham is an absolute scoring threat. We've talked about that for months when you look at his stats, and we were like, why doesn't this guy get more playing time? So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he matches up against Noah Connie and Bediako.
For sure.
And you got those two tower situations going on down there that's going to be alternating in and out. For Arkansas in this game, Nick Smith is back. That was a missing element in the first game. Obviously, Trevin Brazile is still injured, but it'll be interesting to see how Alabama adjusts with Nick Smith being able to spread the floor a little bit, because there was a point in that Arkansas game in Bud Walton, Alabama just completely disrespected Arkansas's jump shot. And it was because they didn't have jump shooters out there on the floor. Nick Smith has the ability to take jump shots, and we saw him get better throughout that Florida game. We saw him start picking up. I expect him to continue that trend in the Georgia game this week. So when we come to the Alabama game, Nick Smith may actually be a threat on the floor.
Yeah, I feel like give him a little bit of confidence, and we'll see Alabama having to, I don't necessarily want to say struggle, but they're definitely going to have to work harder on defense this time around.
Yeah, and it's also a situation, I think this is an actual fact. Alabama does overperform themselves at home. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a very difficult situation for Arkansas to go in and get a win. I do think Alabama will probably take the W here, but I'm thinking that this is going to be a really competitive game given the circumstances. And I think if Mississippi State is capable of coming in and playing a great game like they did against Alabama and Coleman, I certainly think Arkansas is capable of it. Yeah, so sure. That's where I'm coming from on this, is that I think it'll be much more competitive. It's not going to be these wonderful blowouts that we've seen against Alabama just decimating the hapless out there.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing to say. I think I just used some fancy language there.
If Arkansas covers the spread, I'll be happy. That's all I'm going to say.
What did they say? Good teams win, great teams cover. So we'll see what happens in that one. 1 p.m. I'm glad they finally stuck a time in this game. It took them forever, and I think
TBA was about to drop.
I think they were all waiting to see what was going to happen. I don't know the real story, but it'll be interesting. I think that's going to be a great early afternoon slot game to watch on. I think it'll probably end up on ESPN, but I'm not sure about TV right now for that one. But that'll be fun. That'll be a really good game. Let's move on to our next team, and that is the incredibly, wonderfully, horrid. Disappointing Auburn Tigers. Maddie, last week we talked about the downward spiral of Auburn. It continues.
I mean, just to be blunt, in my notes, I have what in the world is going on in Auburn. That's how they start.
I don't know. I don't know. Okay, so Auburn, they are. And so just some quick notes on where we're at with Auburn.
Yeah.
They've lost 6 of their last 8 ball games. Auburn has
lost 5 of the last 7 conference games.
Yes. And then on top of that, you've also got the situation that they don't have a Q1 win since January 7th, or they haven't beaten a top 30 net team since January 7th. That's also their last Q1 win, and they have 2 Q1 wins on the season. One of those is a neutral site Q1 win in which they beat Northwestern, and I have to check the net today to actually see where Northwestern is. Let me pull that up real fast.
Northwestern's been winning, so they're probably pretty high.
They're probably in a decent spot, but it's They were in the 40s, and to keep a neutral site when in their place, it's got to be in the 50s. So it was already a lower situation. It was kind of it's just bad.
Yeah. I mean, Auburn dropped.
They actually dropped one this week.
30.
Yeah, Northwestern dropped one this morning. They're now at a 43. So they're 7 spots away from that falling out.
They're sitting close.
Yeah, they're going to be sweating it. No, if Northwestern starts losing some ball games, it could be a struggle for Auburn to maintain where they're at. It's really, really, really bad. I don't have any faith in Auburn.
I think we take into consideration Vanderbilt is doing a little bit better, but they got beat by Vanderbilt, lost, got swept by A&M, and this is recent. Like, it's one of those things. I'm not a fan of Auburn, but still, it's kind of like one of those things we see them go from 100 to 0 real quick.
We do, and here's the thing: they've got a schedule coming up in front of them that looks very similar to Arkansas' schedule. They've got to go to their first game on Tuesday. I'm not sure what day it is. On the 22nd, they play Ole Miss.
Yeah,
and so that's the game that you're like, you have to win this one so you can avoid the bad loss. Like, to me, like, that's the most important game that Arkansas is going to have, is going to be against Georgia next week, and the most important game for Auburn is not to lose to Ole Miss. Like, that's very, very important. You can't take another bad loss. And you got that one at home, so you better beat Ole Miss, because that one poison. That is a poison game. And then after that, you're at Kentucky, you're at Alabama, and then you play Tennessee to wrap up the season at home. That's not easy. Nothing about that is easy.
And, Kentucky's been on a better streak as of late, putting themselves in a better position. So I really think that game's going to be a struggle for Auburn. And if they don't win, I kind of think that's their last chance to get a win.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so let's talk about that Kentucky game, because I feel like that's the most significant game for the Tigers this week. The Kentucky game is in Rupp, and that's not going to be easy. Now, Janai Broome versus Oscar Shibwe is where this game's going to be won on the boards. That's going to be a big portion of it. And then I just look at this. You're looking at two teams that are trending in very different directions. Over Auburn's last 5, they're 1 for 4. Kentucky's last 5, they're 3 for 2. They're 3 and 2.
Yeah.
Like, Kentucky's beaten Tennessee. They beat Mississippi State. They do have that loss to Georgia and Arkansas, and they've also got a wins against Florida. They've been trending in a good direction, and they're knocking on the outside of that top 30 spot. Auburn coming into Rupp and a fan base that's very, very much, we're going to make sure we don't get back on, because right now, according to some bracketologists, they're above the last buys right now. So they're starting to look at the 10 seeds or the up, are in a good situation. They're in a better situation than they were. So it's going to be a portion of consideration, I think, for Kentucky fans. I'm trying to find my words here, but like, Kentucky fans are going to be like, we're not letting this season die right now. Exactly. I think that's the attitude.
Yeah, I think, when it comes to going back to Auburn, you really have to look at, these next 2 wins are going to be so crucial, because I have a feeling that they're not going to get anywhere with Alabama. And if Tennessee is trying to get back their mojo and do what they did against Alabama, they're not going to take it easy on Auburn either.
No, definitely not. And then it should be noted that Kentucky also, when we talk about rebounding and how important it is for this game, neither one of these teams shoot extremely well, so that's why I'm like, the boards are so significant. Kentucky does generate more second chance opportunities with their offensive rebounding than Auburn does, and they also win the rebounds per game. And on the rebound differential, Kentucky's the number 1 team in the SEC compared to Auburn, who's 8th. So there's a difference. Kentucky normally wins the boards by 8 rebounds a game. Auburn, a little less than 3. Yeah. So I do favor Kentucky at home to play the boards extremely well, and that'd be a great, big, important emphasis from Cal and his game plan.
I mean, what's crazy is you look just at the pure team stats. Kentucky isn't even ahead by 1 on rebounds. They're only ahead by 1 on assist. They've got 2 less blocks per game. And then field goal percentage is pretty similar.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just looking at the raw stats, this should be a pretty evenly fought game. But I have a feeling it's not going to go that way.
I lean toward Rupp Arena in the default there, so that's my thought process. Yeah. I will pick Kentucky to win this game, and I just think that the situation just continues to get worse in Auburn.
Yeah,
and
I agree with that.
And then we're talking very much NIT. Looking at the standings, Auburn's would fall behind Vanderbilt, and then we're talking Mizzou and Arkansas are both 7-7. If both Mizzou and Arkansas were able to pick up a game this week, that would put them at 8-7. So that would be in the tie situation with Auburn. Florida is also at 7-7, and Auburn could fall. There's a path. There is a
path to destruction
to where they could fall outside the top 8 in the SEC if things continue. I believe there is a path for that to happen.
I mean, I think that's a path that they're going down right now.
It definitely is so, because the cutoff right now is at Florida. Mm-hmm. Florida is 7-7. They're only a game back from Auburn. All 4 teams below you can pass you and put you up in that very back of the line when it comes to the SEC tournament.
Yeah,
and the then, no man's land no one wants to be.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at Mississippi State, they're 6-8.
Yeah.
If they can turn it around, get a couple of wins these next couple of weeks, you could even get there.
If Mississippi State were to somehow pick up both their games this week, that would put them at 8-8. Mm-hmm. Auburn could very much as well be at 8-8 as well, so we'll see where that goes. And that would also give Mississippi State at 20 wins, and I believe that would put them over Auburn as well. So, like I said, there is a floor that Auburn can hit. There's no safety net behind them right now, and everything could go really, really bad for the folks down on the plains.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about our next situation here, and that is our team, the Arkansas Razorbacks, my beloved alma mater and our home state.
It feels good to finally get a win.
I would love to say I think we're all in a different place after Saturday if you're a Razorback fan, because I think during the Texas A&M game, very stressful situation. Now, here is the odd thing about this. All week long, my boss is sitting there talking to me, and he's going, "Hey, man, how you feeling about Arkansas, in the Texas A&M game? What's your thoughts on this?" And I'm sitting there telling him, listen, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. The most important thing that needs to occur is that Arkansas needs to win all 3 of its home games to make the SEC tournament, or make the NCAA tournament. The other games are gravy. And you just need to, if any of those wins you pick up along the way are bonus points.
Exactly.
What I think hurt about the Texas A&M game more than anything else is the fans who knew that logically were upset because there were bonus points right in front of you and you just let them drop out of your hands.
Exactly.
And then the other side of that was if you haven't been following along, it looked like the sky fell. It's no.
I think for that game, it was more so the situation of we should have won that game.
I agree.
Should have been a win.
Arkansas should have won that game.
But Arkansas can't close on the road, and we saw it again.
Yeah, the Eric Musselman, Muss has talked about it, and it's so frustrating for him and this team. And I think the youth on this team, and I think the other, factors about injuries and whatnot, this team has had a problem closing. Yep. Now, I had a lot of questions coming to that A&M game. Is why did you not play Jalen Graham more? How many times have I said that this season? Why are you not playing Jalen Graham more?
I think you started it when we started the podcast, because we were we haven't seen Jalen Graham in these summer games at all.
Yeah, it's will you please play Jalen Graham? And then, Nick Smith getting no time in the second half. Yep. I was bad. What the minutes that I saw Nick Smith get in the Texas A&M game were the minutes I thought we were going to see him play in the Mississippi State game.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be totally flipped, and I had no idea what the thought process, the reasoning, or anything else was. My only guess is that Muss was concerned about when he didn't give much in the press conference either. Yep. Again, about what his mind is actually saying. My thought process, or what he might have been thinking, was big boy in there, go get rebounds. That was part of it. But then you got Jalen Graham. Why are you not getting Jalen Graham out there to go get some rebounds and dominate this much smaller team? I don't think it's a mistake we're going to see again. I think Jalen Graham knew that when he got minutes against the oh, good grief, Florida this week, to make the most out of them. Yeah. Because he took advantage, and I think he showed everyone why he's supposed to get more minutes. So I was very happy to see that Jalen Graham got more time in that game. But yeah, Texas A&M was an absolute heartbreak. Then you come and play Florida, a Castleton-less Florida at that, because Castleton's broken his hand, which was pretty significant news this week for Florida.
Yep.
There's no time for mercy, though, in Arkansas' situation. You got to win this game. And the score might have said that they won by 19. They won that game by more in reality. So like very dominant performance from Arkansas in that one. I don't know if Colin Castleton is worth that many points to make up the difference where Florida could have upset Arkansas at home. Yep. I didn't ever have the feeling that Florida was going to upset Arkansas at home because the guard matchup really favored Arkansas to begin with. But it was nice to see Arkansas. Actually, this is a better way to put it. As my friend Chris put it to me while we were sitting in the stands, and he said, I was like, Castleton's not in this game. I wonder how much of a factor he is. He just turns to me. We were both speculating at the time that Graham was going to go for 30. He goes, 30's 30. I don't care who you're playing against. 30 is 30. And I'm like, that's a good point. 30 is 30, and that is an outstanding ball game. He finished with, 24, 26 points?
Yeah, I think 24.
Yeah.
It's one of those things we've heard rumors about the situation with Muss and Graham. And, I'm obviously not like an inside expert, but it seemed... while he was playing, that they meshed better.
I never thought it was a playing situation. It was something else. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, when you look at the fact that, Muss now seems to have everyone on board, I think this team can go further than we thought it could a couple weeks ago.
You know how excited Jalen Graham was to hit 2 free throws at the end? That was his proudest moment of the game. Not even the dunks or anything else.
I was proud too.
Everyone was proud. I just turned to Chris and go, Jalen hit free throws. It was just amazing.
I really hate that we get so excited about that, but at this point, it's like, come on.
I know, it's so frustrating. It's just insane. Huge game for Jalen Graham, 26 points, 7 rebounds. As I mentioned earlier in the Alabama segment, I'm very curious to see how the setup is going to be going for Arkansas down the road with the Mitchell twins alternation that they kind of put in place in that, because I'm interested to see how that defensive presence from the Mitchell twins, because they're leaders in blocks in the SEC, both of them in the top 10. Then Jalen Graham is clearly a down low scoring threat. I don't know a lot of teams who have 2 bigs that can go out and play like that to where they can be good on defense and good on offense at the exact same time to face up that kind of matchup. Yeah. It makes a very interesting dynamic down low.
And I don't know if it was purely the fact that we were in Bud Walton and it was a home game, but, I feel like Ricky Council, based on the eye test,
started slow but kept going
in the mid-range. Mm-hmm. We've got Devo that's obviously usually excels in the mid-range. I think the down low and mid-range threat that we're going to have from multiple players is going to give us more of a chance against Alabama.
Yeah, you're right. When you look at that Memphis game, for instance, Memphis did a really good job in Coleman of beating Alabama in the mid-range. And it was one of those games they actually had players struggling too. And I think a big part of that is that teams just simply don't know how to defend the mid-range anymore because analytics have changed this game so dramatically that it becomes actually one of these reserve weapons in your back pocket is that you can pull out this shot. So I think it's interesting, and I think that Nick Smith Jr. adding a little bit more into the jumper game from distance helps Arkansas quite a bit, and it might make a very competitive game for them to face Alabama this week.
Yeah, I think it really is going to depend on Alabama's defensive strategy because they're going to want to spread the floor a little bit more with Nick Smith. But then if you have those threats that can cut a couple feet inside, get a clean shot because somebody's rushing to guard Nick out on the 3, it could open up some big opportunities for the Hogs.
Absolutely. And let's talk about real fast the most important game of the week for Arkansas, and that is against Georgia on Tuesday. This is the most important game of the week because you can't lose it.
Exactly.
That's straight up what it is. No, everyone's Georgia's the most important game of the week. What about Alabama? No. You're at the point of the season now where your resume is your resume, and anything you get is gravy, and it helps. It makes the mashed potatoes go down a little bit better when you serve it up to the committee. Georgia,
I think it's one of those situations. You don't have to win. You just can't lose.
Yeah, no, exactly. Georgia would be the equivalent of putting tapioca pudding in the middle of the mashed potatoes. So, no one's going to like that.
Yep.
So, in my opinion, Georgia is the most important game for Arkansas this week. They need to beat Georgia, and then they can focus on Alabama. And it worries me because I worry that sometimes younger players might be a little bit, let's get revenge on Alabama for what they did in Bud Walton and look past this Georgia team
Yep.
that beat Kentucky and has had some good wins along the way and is a little bit embarrassed right now coming out of Coleman. So you better focus in on that Georgia team if you're Arkansas, because to me, that's the most important game, and that's going to define. You've got 2 out of the 3 home wins at that point, if you beat Georgia, that you need to get to make the tournament. So Georgia, most important game this week. Then worry about Alabama. Then worry about Tennessee, and then wrap the season up in the most important game in that last stretch, which is, of course, Kentucky to win at home. But I think you need to figure out how you're going to win one of those road games. And then you got to figure out how you're going to beat Georgia this week. That's the most important thing. If you look at those 3 games, figure out how you're going to beat Georgia. Figure out how you're going to either beat Alabama or Tennessee. That's crucial.
I think, one of the advantages for Georgia is that it's a Tuesday night game.
Yeah.
At 8 o'clock.
On a short turnaround.
Yeah. I mean, not that Arkansas fans aren't the best fans, because obviously we think we are, but let's be honest, a lot of those season ticket holders especially aren't going to want to go see a basketball game at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night.
No, and Georgia's playing back-to-back road games, so that's going to be a tough situation for them to be put into. Let's talk about Tennessee real fast. I know that's kind of a hard switch. It's because we're going to a whole different side of the conference, I feel like, right now. Tennessee had a week of 2 different games, which is the weirdest way to say that ever, but it's like a tale of 2 cities, right?
It was like Arkansas weather. We were wearing shorts and short sleeves with 70 degrees, and the next day I had to go home and get a jacket on my lunch break because I was freezing.
Bingo. And yeah, it's the best of times, it is the worst of times. Back to my tale of 2 city analogy right there. On the best of times, you beat Alabama at home, everything's good. And the worst of times, my buddy Chris, who I was at the Razorback game with, is, of course, a Tennessee alumni before he's joined me here in law school. And he was talking, he's in a group chat with all his friends back from Tennessee, and it's, oh my God, he was showing me the group chat. It's like, you're this dude,
We'll add some bleeps in there.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll figure a way to edit that out. But yeah, blankety blank. It was so bad. Oh, my goodness. And, yeah, Vols trailed Kentucky by 20 points at halftime. Tennessee struggled during the first 20 minutes, and they ended up trailing 39-19 at the half. Vols shot 31% in that first half and only going 1 for 13 from the 3-point range. Casey Wallace and Oscar Shebue each scored 16 points. It was just, I don't know how Kentucky has 2 100-plus losses in the 2 100-plus, I guess that's the best way to say it, outside the top 100 losses on their resume, but can beat Tennessee twice in a season. It doesn't make it. Welcome to college basketball, everyone. Doesn't make any sense, but it is what it is.
Yeah, just looking at this game, Tennessee's 3-point percentage lost them the game.
Yes.
Again,
when they shot 4 in the first matchup, too.
Yeah. When they seem to be reliant on these 3-point plays, you can't shoot 14% from the arc. And then, especially against Kentucky, lost the board battle 39-21.
Yep.
That's just something you're going to have to prepare for against Kentucky if you want to get a win, and they obviously did not.
Yeah, so it's very frustrating. This is just one of those side nets one of these stats that aren't really a stat kind of thing, because I don't care what the AP poll has to say about anything. But Tennessee has 5 losses in their last. They have 5 losses this season to unranked teams when they're ranked in the top 10.
Yep.
Does that make any sense? I mean, I know that sentence makes sense, but does that make any sense on how Tennessee keeps losing?
No,
not at all. Yeah. Are they a top 10 team or not? Because these losses are horrible that they keep taking. It's very frustrating. But this week they have Texas A&M, a game we've talked about a little bit earlier. I do think that we may prepare ourselves to see a little bit of wounded animal mode out of Tennessee again, but the good news is, regardless of how it goes down with Texas A&M, they do have South Carolina and Knoxville at the end of the week. So the world gets a little bit brighter, as you might interpret that. I expect South Carolina to get decimated by Tennessee in this game, but I say that, and South Carolina likes beating teams randomly at times like Kentucky. So, I mean, we'll see what happens in TBA at that point. To be determined and TBD at TBA. There we go. We'll find out.
I think going back to that Aggies game, I know we talked about it a little bit from the Aggies perspective earlier. But if Tennessee plays any other way than how they played against Alabama, I think we see an upset there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Let's move on to Kentucky real fast. Bizarre week for Kentucky, I guess, when you think about how they came off of the Georgia game last Saturday, which their second, like I said, their second loss outside the net, top 100, just very, very concerning. And that was back-to-back losses for Arkansas and Georgia. They have now followed it up with a 2-0 week. I'm sure, again, they'll get some AP votes because the AP is stupid and, like, someone is going to give them praise where it's not deserved.
Yep.
But they beat Mississippi State, a team on the road, so that is a Q1 win that they desperately needed. And then they beat Tennessee at home, another Q1 win that they desperately needed. I think now Kentucky has pulled themselves off the emergency bubble situation with the last four situation, and now they're looking more in the last four buys.
Yeah, definitely. I think, we're starting to see this Kentucky team crawl their way back into being, I don't want to say relevant. That feels a little harsh, but being a team that we're going to have to watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it'll be interesting, right? Because it's Kentucky's in that situation where it's like you can't let anything go, and you got 4 games left. It's not, here's the good news for Kentucky. These are not horribly hard games in their next 3. These are all winnable. Yep. You've got Florida in Gainesville, Auburn, and then you've got Vanderbilt. Your final game is at Arkansas. That one's going to be tough. But if you take those first 3, you're in good shape. You're in really good shape, sure. I think. Yeah, I like that situation. I think the Cats are in a much better place than what they were. And you remember at the earlier part of the season, we were talking, we expected Kentucky to be in the top 4 in the SEC.
They could get there with those.
No, they're there.
They are there?
They're already? 4th. Yeah, they are 4th in the SEC right now behind Tennessee with a 9-5 record. Very surprising, given where they were when you consider where they started this whole journey after Christmas. So
definitely.
It's been interesting about the consistency is there. Now they need to get, they're playing for seeding now or starting to play for seeding. They're still very much where they can fall back into the bubble range. So they got to make sure they don't drop any of these games they should win. Yeah. But we'll see what happens with Kentucky. Very interesting games coming up. So we'll understand more about the Cats coming up. Let's see what Cal does and see if that minuscule amount of praise that we gave them puts them back on the trajectory of doom, because that seems to be the trend that we have going on with them. Real fast, let's talk about Kentucky and Auburn, which is the game to kind of check out this week, I feel like, for Kentucky. It's kind of important. Like I said, they're in Rupp. I feel good about Kentucky beating Auburn. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier in the Auburn segment, but I do feel good about Kentucky beating Auburn at home this week.
I mean, you like to bring up trap games. I kind of wonder if that could be one. They go get an easier win at Florida because Florida's without Castleton. They get back, it's a home game, should be an easy win. Mm-hmm. And like we said, Auburn's in a bad place right now, and they need a win.
Well, I will say that I think Kentucky looks interested again in playing basketball, considering where they're at right now in their season. And I don't think anybody's necessarily looking past Auburn, a team that's, above 500 in conference play. So I don't think that's like playing Georgia or playing Ole Miss or something like that. I don't think you're going to fall into the trap in that situation. I think it's going to be a little bit better situation. I like Kentucky to win this game. That's just me. I think it'll be interesting, but it'll be a tight game. But I do like Kentucky to win it. Let's move on to our good friends north of us in Missouri. Why? 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 Why?
I have beef with Mizzou lately. I don't know. I'm just really annoyed that we're tied with them as an Arkansas fan.
So it was interesting. Like at the beginning of this week that we put Mizzou 3rd in our power rankings. Oh my, how they have fallen. No one wants to be 3rd in this conference, apparently. No one wants to take that number 3 spot, apparently. Like it's just a poison spot. Arkansas's had it, Mizzou's had it, Texas A&M I think had it at one point. And Texas A&M kept winning, and they were like, "We'll go to 2, it's fine." And then Kentucky had it at one point. Kentucky lost it. It's a mess. No one wants to be 3.
Our 3 spot's cursed.
Our 3 spot is cursed, clearly. And I feel bad for the next team. Who do we have as our 3 this week? I'm going to look that up right now because obviously you're right. The 3 spot is absolutely cursed. Like, yep, it's Tennessee. Everyone in Knoxville just went, hold up.
No, we suck. Move us.
Move us to 4. Make us 4. I didn't know what to do with Tennessee, honestly. Yeah,
they're a mystery right now.
No one wants to be 3. No one wants to be 3, so someone had to be picked to be 3. So congratulations, Tennessee. You're the closest to 3.
You're the unluckiest of the week.
It's so bad. But yeah, though we're talking about Mizzou though right now. Yep. Since that buzzer beater shot in Knoxville that they wonderfully hit, and we thought, oh man, Mizzou, you guys are winning so many ball games and you look so good. They followed that up with getting the tar beat out of them by Auburn and Neville. And then, as we expected, Texas A&M, we didn't think there was going to be much of a difference. Texas A&M just looked like a better basketball team.
Yeah.
Texas A&M beats Mizzou and sweeps Mizzou on the season. So they went 0-2 last week, and now they're facing Mississippi State and Georgia this week. Very interesting. Mississippi State, I think, is just a really red-hot team. I like Mississippi State's defense to actually get the win here, but it is in Como. Mm-hmm. So it's intriguing how you bounce back in your back-to-back home games. It is on the 21st. I believe that's Tuesday. So that short turnaround for Mizzou at home, I like Mizzou to make this really competitive. This might be the best game that we look at this week. Like, honestly, from a just pure game standpoint. Really good offense versus really good defense.
Yeah, previewing this, I think, just going through stats based on eye tests from games I've seen, Mississippi State's going to be a hard one for this Mizzou team to overcome, at home or not. I think State has the defensive tools to keep Mizzou at bay. Mm-hmm. Because, you look at it and Mizzou's offense is really what's going for them, has gotten them this many wins on the season, but they've struggled against good defensive teams.
Absolutely, and one of the things that Mizzou does really well is shoot threes. Now, in their last matchup, Mississippi State held Mizzou to 26.1% from 3. That's not a good recipe for Mizzou. They don't win those games. It was competitive on the boards, which was kind of surprising, but if you look at the flow of that game, when you look at the second half around the 10-minute and 38-second mark, that's where Mississippi State takes over the dang game. Like, they start funneling through, and they put some separation between themselves and in Mizzou. And you look at it back in the first half as well, around the 3-minute mark, closing out the end of the first half. That's also where we see that game, and then Mizzou close it up, and then the widen margin again as to close out that last quarter of the game. So I do like Mississippi State to play solid defense again and hold them to it, but this game is at home, so I don't think Mizzou's going to shoot 26% again from home, but it could be in the 40s because Mississippi State is still a really good defense, and I think that's going to make this game, a little bit closer than it was last time. Last time, Mississippi State beat Mizzou by 11 points.
Yeah, I think it'll be, like you said, it might be our best game of the week. Not really,
Not the most crucial game, but it'll be probably one of the most entertaining to watch.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be one of those, if you're not a fan, you can sit back and enjoy good basketball. If you are a fan, you're probably going to be cussing and throwing things.
Yes, and it's one of those games that there's going to be consequences. There's something being played for on State. Mississippi State wants to get out of the bubble situation. Yep. Mizzou, they want a better seed than what they got right now because they probably fell from a 5 seed all the way down to the 7-8 line right now at this point. So it's curious. And then their game against Georgia at the end of the week. Got to be Georgia. It'll run Mizzou's in the tournament, but you don't want to lose to Georgia just for the fact.
Georgia's just trying to ruin everybody.
They're running seasons. They're a running seasons team, and that is who the Georgia Bulldogs are. All right, so yeah, that's where we are with them. Let's turn to our very last team to talk about, and that is, of course, the Mississippi State Bulldogs, who got a huge win on Saturday. I say huge win. It really wasn't a huge win on Saturday. It was a game that they couldn't lose, and that would be to Ole Miss in Oxford, and they got that job done. Mississippi State, despite the loss to Kentucky, has won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They have won 7 out of their last 8 ball games. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd for a team that started so slow at a conference play, and now they look pretty good. They're in a good spot. I'm sorry, they've won 6 of their last 7 games. That's my bad. because that's where they are. But like that's still remarkable, like how hot this team has been. No one's stopping them. They're getting the wins as they come. Of course, they are facing Mizzou and Texas A&M this week. We've talked about both of those games. Mississippi State, I think if you can get one more of these games, preferably the game in Mizzou, because it'll end up being a quad 1 game. Both these games are quad 1 chances, which would be huge for Mississippi State.
Yeah.
If you can get one of these, I think you put yourself pretty good into the tournament, because your last 2 games are against South Carolina and Vanderbilt. Now, I'm not discounting Vandy, because Vandy clearly has things on their mind, and they're not completely dead yet.
Yeah.
But I do think that Mississippi State is on the path that this week right here will determine if they get into the tournament or not.
Yeah, I think, stepping into the time machine, we look at that game against TCU, and after just a string of tough losses, it's like it was a confidence builder. And they came in and they beat several teams, some crucial games,
some good
for
teams,
sure.
Yeah, but they won games.
Yeah, I think that confidence boost has kind of helped carry them through this season. I think really if they beat this Missouri team on the road, who knows how that Texas A&M is going to end up. And then, like you said, they've got South Carolina and Vandy. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, so, of course, in our Everybody Else segment, I will continue this. Kermit Davis needs to be fired. I am begging the fine folks, I'm begging the people of Oxford, Mississippi, to make your voices heard. Kermit Davis is below 500 his entire time at Ole Miss.
So, slightly distasteful tweet, but it made me laugh a little bit.
Okay, go for it. Like, explain yourself away.
Somebody tweeted that I saw yesterday, "Screw Kermit, let's bring on Chris Beard," and I was like, "Oh no,
no." That's almost as bad as when I got in my car this week and I was driving down the road listening to Feinbaum. And, like, I hate the Feinbaum show. I really do. But, like, I was listening to this LSU fan just go berserk. And he was sitting there yelling about McMahon. And he was like, "I want Will Wade back."
I don't know which one's worse.
I don't either. It's all gross in my opinion. But, yeah, Kermit Davis in his time at Ole Miss, and I'm pulling this up real fast. He's had 4 seasons at Ole Miss. The last time, 2019 was the last time they made the tournament.
Nice.
4 seasons. Once. It hasn't been back. They've never advanced in the tournaments. They haven't advanced in the tournament in his entire tenure. He has a losing record. It's horrible. They have one active NBA player under, and that's Terrence Davis, and yep. I'm not even sure if Terrence Davis was. I don't think he was actually. Like he went to Ole Miss he was the last year maybe something like that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'd have to check that out because he was an undrafted in 2019. So yeah, that's where we are. Like Kermit Davis has produced no NBA talent really. He's produced nothing. Like, absolutely nothing for the Rebels. It's just horrible, and I don't think that they should keep him around anymore. Because also, like, here's the thing. And I know that people are going to say, keep your own team, and, talk about your own team. Don't talk about the way that we manage our team. Well, I'm sure that Ole Miss fans, there are several Ole Miss fans who agree that Kermit Davis needs to go. But
yep.
Part of the problem is that when you look at the SEC and you look at their net rating, the SEC has a very strong net rating in the top 10 teams if you take their average. But if you look at the bottom teams, they're horrible.
Yeah.
But like the bottom teams right now are when you look at this Ole Miss, South Carolina, LSU, and Georgia. 3 of those teams have an excuse.
Yeah.
3 of those teams are okay to be bad. Georgia's in their first year with Mike White. LSU's in their first year with McMahon. South Carolina's in their first year with Lamont Paris. Ole Miss is in year 4. They're in year 4, and they're not making the NCAA tournament. They're not making the NIT. It's just they have had no success. I'm sorry, he needs to go.
Yeah,
because he's hurting the conference at this point.
We're at the point. Presidential elections. You got 4 years to do something good, and then maybe get voted back in.
Yeah.
It's time to vote somebody else in over Ole Miss.
Right now, if you were to lose to Ole Miss, it would be poison to your schedule. It would be poison to your entire resume going into the season. I'm very much. It needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I know that Ole Miss fans are may or may not share that sentiment. I don't know where the board of directors' heads are, or where the athletic director's head is at with this program right now, but it's definitely one of the worst in the SEC.
After this season, I don't see how you couldn't be.
There's no justification.
Yeah.
There's no justification on it. There's no justification in keeping a 74-78 coach.
Yikes.
48% of his games won, and you're paying this man $2.85 million a year to not win games.
Yeah.
And not put butts in the seat in your brand new stadium. So
that's a paycheck I wouldn't want to cash.
No, absolutely not. No, not in my consideration in the least bit. Yep. Oh well. We're done talking about that. I say brand new stadium. It was built in 2016, but that's relatively new. Yeah. So, yeah, you can pay for this thing, man.
I mean, if we're going on to the everyone else tab, my big everyone else for the week is Vandy.
Vandy was worth talking about. Yeah.
Moving up to 89 in the net. I think, if we see some of that same production that we've been seeing from them, this 5-game win streak could extend and really upset some teams and, their hopes for the postseason.
I'm calling them zombie Vandy for the rest of the season because Jerry Stackhouse is like, everybody had us buried, but we're back. And I was like, yeah, it's like zombies rising from the ground. A lot of people got upset about that tweet that I tweeted out Saturday night when I was like, is it time to have the Vandy conversation? Everyone was like, no Vandy conversation. Their metrics aren't great, but I've heard bracketologists start talking about they do not need to win the SEC tournament to make the tournament.
Yeah. And
so, they're live.
I mean, they're 8-6. They're ahead of Missouri. They're ahead of Arkansas. Ahead of Florida.
Yep.
I mean, if things go the way that we've talked about Auburn, they're probably going to be ahead of Auburn.
Conference standings will have nothing to do at the end of it, but they will consider that, Vandy's had a decently difficult schedule. They've gone on the road to play a lot of these teams. They have a number of Q1 wins. Why not Vandy?
Yep.
Why not Vandy? Now, granted, Vandy's got some work to do to get there, but we'll see how it goes. Very interested to keep up with Vandy over the next couple of weeks. I did not think, given the situations as it was going earlier this year, that we would be seeing Vandy rise from the dead. Jerry Stackhouse has done a fantastic job and is earning that extension that he had.
Definitely.
Yeah, I much better feeling about where Jerry Stackhouse is in this year with Vanderbilt. So I think if you get to an NIT and you perform well in the NIT again this year, I think you're in a good place for Vanderbilt to continue to move forward. And I think that'll show that you can attract some talent in the long term to get them there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's actually going to wrap up the show this week. I think we're going to wrap it up a little bit earlier, unless you just want to talk about the fact that maybe Mike Neighbors needs to be fired at Arkansas. Talk about a little bit of women's basketball real fast.
Man,
Look, I'll start it off because I have a little bit of emotional love for Mike Anderson. I don't mean I want to run off with the man and marry him or anything.
Me and Mike Neighbors?
Yeah, me and Mike Neighbors would make a cute couple, wouldn't we? But, Mike Neighbors coached my high school.
Okay.
Yeah, and, we have a very successful women's program at my high school in Cabot High. When we were there, we were three-peat state champions, Yeah. He didn't coach that team, but he built it to he built it to that place. And then he was very successful at Washington when he became the head coach at Washington. Took Washington to a Final Four, and you bring him in and bring this Arkansan home. And this is the job he wanted, was the head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks. And at the end of this season, he's not made any progress of where he was in the past couple of years of building this team. And then you look at other programs around the SEC and where you want to be. Look where LSU's gotten to. Look where Tennessee is. Look where South Carolina is. Do you want to be one of those programs? Because you have one of the best stadiums in the SEC. You have one of the best basketball traditions collectively in the SEC. Do you want your women's program to be a part of that or not? And so I think it's time that Arkansas invests in finding a really good basketball coach for themselves.
Yeah, I think so too. As much as I feel like Mike Neighbors has done for the program, in terms of fans and being a good person to coach these players, he seems like a great, very compassionate coach that the players all seem to love. But that can only get you so far when you're sitting kind of in the mid-range of the SEC standings.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess. A lot of people at the beginning of the season talked about the fact that we all felt that this was probably the most talented team that Mike Neighbors has had at Arkansas, and it's continued to be a letdown. So that's kind of where I'm at emotionally with it. I don't have a lot of faith. They lost 71-48 to Georgia today, and those are two teams in two different places.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
Georgia's a building program right now. They're trying to find their way into the NCAA tournament. You're a bubble team that was falling, and your bubble probably burst today. So it's a bad spot for Arkansas, and it's looking like a letdown of a season. I don't particularly like where Arkansas is, and I don't foresee it necessarily getting better. I think things need to change for Arkansas in the coming future. That's just where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, like, he's either going to have to turn it around, beat Mississippi State and A&M, do something in the tournament to prove that he's a good coach for the job.
Yeah, it's getting to that point. Let's talk about a couple of games. This one's going to be really interesting. South Carolina and Tennessee on next Thursday, and that will be in TBA. Really exciting. We talked about earlier this year that Tennessee could be the team that beats South Carolina.
Yep.
It's still possible in my head, but I favor the Gamecocks quite a bit, and because they just look great.
Yeah, I think, if there's anything going Tennessee's way, they're slowly climbing from where they were at, when they started kind of having that disappointing stretch, and it's in Knoxville. I think we see, not South Carolina doesn't struggle by any means on road games, but obviously there's something to say about road games when you're going to TBA, because it's a different basketball atmosphere when it comes to women's basketball there.
Absolutely. And then next Sunday, there's two games that I think everyone should kind of keep an eye on, and that is Ole Miss and Alabama, both 21 teams playing in a good direction. That'll be in Coleman and Tuscaloosa. Ole Miss, good team. They've played a really tough schedule right now in these last couple of games. I believe they have South Carolina tonight or today at some point. But yeah, it's really tough for Ole Miss. They've got a handful of games, but they're going to go into Coleman and play a tough Alabama team. And then also Mississippi State, who is a bubble team right now, according to Crean, has to go and play LSU in Baton Rouge. Mississippi State playing some really good basketball. It'll be interesting to see how they match up against a very tough LSU team.
Yeah, and I mean, LSU women's basketball has been selling out. So I think that's going to be a rough atmosphere for Mississippi State to overcome.
Not the place you want to necessarily go play basketball in.
Exactly.
And that I will agree with you. And it's going to be another fun week of basketball. It's always fun when we get to sit down and talk about this stuff. But, it's been fun. We've got 2 weeks left of this regular season. And then we start SEC tournament play. And then we sit down and we start Selection Sunday.
Man. I'm ready.
I'm ready. I'm ready. It's so here. It's here.
It's weird. After your team gets a win, you get excited about basketball
again. You just feel good. You're like, oh yeah, right. let's do some basketball, folks. Like, yeah.
I mean, in all honesty, I texted David after the Texas A&M game, and I said, I'm not talking about Arkansas this week. I refuse. They are getting the silent treatment.
Yeah, and then they beat Florida and shot 90% from the free throw line.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
You were forgiven.
we can be friends again.
Yeah, we're all good with this. Everybody's happy. Oh, my God. Go out and enjoy some basketball, folks. We got more stuff coming up for you, including a live show for Selection Sunday that I'm dragging and forcing Maddie to do. So it'll be a blast. It'll be a blast. You never know who's going to stop by for that show when it comes around. We may have some guests, but we'll see what happens. See you guys soon. It's been another great week, and hopefully my dogs weren't too annoying in the background today. All right.
Holler at us on Twitter. Give us some fun basketball to talk about. Fun takes.
And I know a couple of you folks who've gotten to know us out there. My dogs' names are River and Joey. So if you want to see pictures of them, I'll share a couple on the Facebook. If you, or not my Facebook, my Twitter. If you guys so desperately want to see them, maybe I'll put River in a basketball jersey or something.
There we go.
All right. Peace out, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Oh damn it, I'm tired. This running takes a toll on your mind. Oh damn it, I tried. Too late, now here comes the fight. Stay here and hold me. I'm in agony, you're a poison. You drip through my veins, slowly strangle my brain as you haunt me. Stay here and hold me. Sick of the screams in the pillow. I'm hoarse from your name, I keep screaming in vain as you haunt me. I try the runaround, hopeless with your laces tied. Find another route, how long till I get it right? Oh damn it, I'm tired. This running takes a toll